Greetings, Mr. Michelangelo Maglake. I am Eliza Jane Cristobal, and I am here to present the biography of Wolfgang Kohler. Wolfgang Kohler was a German psychologist and phenomenologist born in Revel, Estonia on January 21, 1887. His main interest was psychology, and some of his notable ideas were psychology of problem solving, and he is also a co-founder of Gestalt Psychology together with Max Wertheimer and Kurt Kafka. Wolfgang Kohler was son of Franz Eduard Kohler, director of the German language gymnasium in Revel, and of Wilhelmine Gingerson Kohler, both of whom were offsprings of ministers. The family moved to Wolfenbüttel, Germany, when Wolfgang was 6 years old. Kohler attended the University of Tübingen, Bonn, and University of Berlin, when he received a thorough scientific training in physics, chemistry, and biology. In Berlin, he studied with the famous physicist Max Planck, whose teachings influenced his approach to psychology. He received his PhD in psychology from the Berlin University in 1909 with a dissertation on psychoacoustics under the direction of Carl Stamp. After receiving his doctorate, Kohler began work at the Psychological Institute at the Frankfurt Academy. His early work in the psychology involved the psychological analysis of audition, combining his training in science with his love of music. Year 1910, Kurt Kafka moved to Frankfurt, and that year, Kohler and Kafka began as Max Wertheimer's first subjects in the earliest experiments of the work that laid the foundation of Gestalt psychology. Year 1912, Kohler married the painter and sculptor Tekla Achenbach, and they had four children. This work was interrupted in 1913 when Kohler was appointed director of the Anthropoid Station on Tenerife in the Canary Islands. Due to World War I, he remained in that position until 1920, conducting numerous experiments on animal perception, cognition, and learning. There he wrote his acclaimed book, The Mentality of Apes, year 1917. There is also a possibility that his appointment in Tenerife was not entirely for academic purposes, but that was employed by the government of Germany as a spy. Year 1920, Kohler returned to Berlin as an acting director of the Psychological Institute, becoming chair and director from year 1922 until year 1935. He also held the position of the professor of philosophy at the University of Berlin. Wertheimer was also in Berlin, and they maintained close collaboration with Kafka, who was in Gießen. They continued their work, applying Gestalt principles to a wide variety of psychological issues, attracting students from all over the world. While in Berlin, Kohler wrote Gestalt Psychology, 1929, which described various aspects of Gestalt theory based on the series of investigation conducted at the Institute. When the Nazis began their rise to power in Germany, removing Jewish professors from their positions, Kohler was shocked and outraged. He wrote a letter to the Berlin newspaper protesting and arguing that many of the greatest contributions to German culture had come from Jewish citizens. This may have been the last openly anti-Nazi opinion published during the Third Reich. He also edited his William James lectures from 1934, publishing them in 1938 as a place of value in a world of facts, and continued to pursue his application of ideas from physics such as vector forces in the psychological and ethical context. Year 1956, Kohler was elected the president of the American Psychological Association. Year 1967, on June 11, because of his age, Wolfgang Kohler was died on Enfield, New Hampshire, United States. So that's the end of my report, the biography of Wolfgang Kohler.
Definition of insight learning. Insight learning is a theory of learning first put forth by Wolfgang Kohler about 90 years ago. Learn about the development and definition of this theory and then test your knowledge with a short quiz. Insight learning refers to the sudden of realization of the solution of any problem without repeated trials or continuous practices. It is a type of learning in which one draws on previous experience and also seems to involve a new way of perceiving a logical and cause and effect relationship. Insight learning does not involve gradual shaping or trial and error. Instead, internal organizational processes occur that cause new behavior. Kohler's most famous study on insight learning in 1925 involved Sultan the chimpanzee, who, Kohler argued, used insight to learn a creative way of attaining fruit that was out of reach. Contrary to strict theories of behaviorism, insight learning suggests that we learn not by only conditioning but also by cognitive processes that cannot be directly observed. In humans, insight learning occurs whenever the solution to a problem suddenly appears, even if previously progress was being made. Insight should not be confused with heuristics. An insight is realizing a new behavior to solve a problem, while a heuristic is a mental shortcut to help process a large amount of information. How insight learning was experimented? Kohler placed a chimpanzee named Sultan inside the cage. Sultan grew hungry and a bunch of banana was placed just outside the cage. Sultan was provided with one long and another short bamboo stick. Neither of the sticks could reach the banana alone, and the only possible way to reach the banana was to join the two sticks. Initially, Sultan showed all customary reactions that a chimpanzee shows inside the cage, and gradually tried to draw the banana towards him with the sticks. After countless fruitless efforts, Sultan nearly gave up. But as he was playing with the sticks, he managed to touch the banana by pushing a stick with another stick. Sultan accidentally managed to join the sticks, and with its help, it pulled the banana inside the cage. Sultan immediately grabbed the banana when faced with the same problem the next day.
Here are the characteristics of insight learning. There are two major determining characteristics of insight learning. The first is that insight represents seeing clearly into the heart or essence of a situation. And the second is do not do this by a step-by-step process, but partially by unconscious processes. Although the insight learning suggests sudden realization of a solution, insight is not a process that occurs out of the blue. Some other characteristics of insight learning are as follows. Insight leads to change in perception. Insight is sudden. With insight, the organism tends to perceive a pattern or organization that helps in learning. Understanding plays important role in insight learning. Insight is related with higher order animals and not with inferior animals. Age influences insight learning, while adults are better learners than children. Past experience and perceptual organization is important in perception. And last, some psychologists also relate insight learning with associative learning. In insight, understanding is more useful than dexterity of hands. Now, let's proceed to the stages of insight learning. First is preparation. The process begins as you try to solve the problem. Initially, the learner feels helpless. The individual gathers information about the problem in trial and error. Second is incubation. The problem is consciously put aside but marked on at an unconscious level.
The third stage of insight learning is what we call the insight. So this the stage of where the aha moment or the eureka moment occurs. So this stage where the some mental event bridges the gap between the problem and the solution. So unconsciously the learner has reassembled the elements of the problem into a meaningful whole. So this where the right connections have been made in your mind. So the aha moment occurs, the eureka, and you have an epiphany. So when we say eureka, it is used to express excitement when a discovery has been made, while the epiphany, it is the moment in which you suddenly see or understand something in a new or very clear way. So in this stage, there there is a sudden mental representation of the solution. So let's go on to the fourth stage of insight learning is what we call verification. So this the stage where your solution will be checked, verifying if it's effective. So the epiphany that has occurred on third stage, arrived mentally of course, is now tested out physically. Of course, having the idea or concept is not enough. It needs to be taken back to the thinking and working stage so that it can be materialized. So, of course, you have to make sure that your epiphany is right. You have to test out your solution if it's going to be effective. So, this stage is a great moment in your learning journey because the connection you make solving the problem are likely to help you in the future. In evaluating insight learning, this theory involves the following criteria. First, the situation as a whole is perceived by the learner. Second, the learner tries to see and judge the relationship between various factors involved in the situation. And as a result, the learner is helped in a sudden grasping of solution of the problem. Therefore, learning according to them is restructuring the field of perception through insight. And as a whole, insight depends upon the following factors such as experience, intelligence, learning situation, initial efforts, repetition, and generalization. And there is what we call educational implication of theory of insightful learning. And this theory brings the following important facts into the limelight. So first, the whole is greater than the parts, and therefore the situation should be viewed as a whole, since it's a part of gestalt psychology. Second, the use of blind fumbling and mechanical trial and error should be minimized. The learner should try to see relevant relationships and act intelligently. And third, the purpose or motive plays the central role in the learning process. And that is Insight Learning by Wolfgang Kohler. I hope you've learned something from our presentation, and thank you. Have a blessed day, everyone. God bless.